Hey guys, we're back with you and YuGiOh. It has been a while. I am sorry. I have been all over the world and back again, but I wanted to come back with a very special guest we have here. You probably know him well. But just in case you don't, would you please introduce yourself as one of the Mr. YuGiOhs themselves? TeamAPS's Paul.
Hey guys, this is Paul from TeamAPS. I make YuGiOh videos. It's fun.
Very modest way to introduce yourself. I think you're a little bit more of a duelist than that. But this is really fun because the idea of the whole You and YuGiOh podcast that I've been doing is really just finding out about you and YuGiOh, pulling back that veneer. So we're going to go back into the Wayback Machine, maybe talk about some 360p videos here and there.
Oh, my favorite pastime.
Oh, goodness. But jokes aside, let's talk about the very beginning of things. Because if people want to know about YuGiOh now for you, they can obviously turn into your YouTube channel. But I want you to picture yourself way back. Do you remember your first YuGiOh memory? Like the first time you touched the anime, the show, the cards? Talk about that, fam.
Oh, gosh. Okay. So YuGiOh was actually a shared experience between a sibling and me. My sister and I both watched YuGiOh after school. And so it was, I guess it was 4 kids. I don't remember what was the name of the specific like after school channel, but they would play it. It'd be at like 4 o'clock. And so we would basically have to like rush home from school and like get everything done really fast. And I remember watching, and it was like just as things were starting, Duelist Kingdom, Yugi's grandpa getting sucked into the VHS tape and all of that. And at the time, I think that we both could tell that there was something different about it compared to like every other after school TV show. Like, they would have wanted you to think it's just another show, but like there's just a little bit more weight to YuGiOh and like a little bit more like it's just more striking. The art's more striking. The story's a little bit like more intense. And so for the most part, we just watched that. And then my first exposure to a card in real life, because for some reason, I guess, didn't really know that there were cards in the real world. I think I really did just think it was just like a TV show.
Oh, like it was like just a show? Yeah.
And we went to Books A Million because we would go to Books A Million. It's a bookstore for people who maybe don't know. And apparently there's some people who don't. And I remember like we were checking out and we were just buying books like normal. And then like one of us saw the Yugi and Kaiba starter decks on the shelf just kind of close to like the checkout section. And we begged. We begged to get them. Because at first our parents were like, okay, well, like maybe we'll get you one. And then we were like, no, like it doesn't work that way. Like, because we have to, you got to get 2. She got starter deck Yugi. I got starter deck Kaiba.
Oh, really?
I remember the first impressions that we had. First of all, of the product, I think that the YuGiOh products were so like, the character Kaiba's there and he's staring at you, and then Blue Eyes is there and it has a little cutout card window. So like, you saw that art that you'd seen every time he summoned it in the anime. And then like, I remember when he opened them up, I was like, these cards are so much smaller in real life. Because like, in the show, they look huge. But,
oh, yeah, you could stop a gun's barrel with them, right?
Yeah, I know. And like, it's like, so you open it up, it's like, there were so many initial thoughts that I had. But yeah, that was pretty much kind of my first exposure to it. And I think I was in like maybe 2nd grade at the time, like just started 2nd grade. So yeah.
So when you and your sister picked up each of the different starter decks, did you play like really repeatedly, or was there kind of like an initial push where you just played your heart's content and then you maybe fell off of it for a while?
So interestingly, it's probably closer to the latter. Like we played a lot when we got the decks. We would just, occasionally we're able to kind of start buying packs, but for the most part, we were just playing with what we had. And by and large, I think I played through like 2nd grade, maybe a little of 3rd grade, and actually fell out of the game for a while and put it down for some years, like maybe 4 or 5 years or so, and then eventually ended up getting back into it in what I would call almost like my little personal Yu-Gi-Oh renaissance, and that was probably what started more of like my Paul today Yu-Gi-Oh. But,
so is that around like mid-GX 5Ds era, anime-wise?
Yeah, anime-wise, like start of 5Ds, I would say. Like tail end of GX, start of 5Ds, like 2007, 2008. And like, it was, I don't even remember what got me back at that time. Like, it might have just been seeing somebody in, junior high, like maybe had their cards and brought them, and it kind of made me think like, oh, I'll do this. It might have been just somebody like bringing it up. There were so many little things at that time that I think all pieced together to like bring me back to Yu-Gi-Oh. Because I guess for me, at first it was like a passing fad. Like, you're a kid, you play it obsessively, and then just kind of like move on to the next thing that you're obsessed over. And so, yeah, it was kind of like that.
So when you got back in, everybody knows you play a lot of card games. Were you already playing like other card games at the time and got back into Yu-Gi-Oh, or was Yu-Gi-Oh really like the primordial card game, I guess I should say?
It was always Yu-Gi-Oh. Basically, when I played Yu-Gi-Oh a bunch, it was like my only card game because I'm like 7 or something. But even when I got back into it, I wasn't really interested in any other card games. I don't think, and even today, that I feel like that's something that's like followed me today is it's always been Yu-Gi-Oh. I actually have a tough time kind of, I guess, just gelling with other games. I don't know if it's because Yu-Gi-Oh was, a curse with the first type of situation or like, I don't know, but I just either art doesn't quite grip me or like the rules don't quite like register for me, or maybe it really just comes down to like one's got an anime and then other card games kind of don't. Like most card games don't have that. And so like for Yu-Gi-Oh, it's like see on TV, play game, locks it in for you. There's that little 1-2 punch.
Yeah, that makes sense for sure. One of the things I really liked about Yu-Gi-Oh at first is that like you can be the characters in the anime. You can like go and pick up the cards and you can do what they do.
You can.
You can't really do that with other series. Like I can't go like wear the gloves and then do some stuff. Like it doesn't make the magic happen no matter how many times I click my hands together.
And that even goes for like stuff like Pokemon for me and like other like even because like Pokemon's awesome, but like when I play with the cards, I'm just kind of like, well, these are like a card interpretation of a game or something like that. So it's whereas like with Yu-Gi-Oh, when I play Dark Magician, Yugi picked up a card, put it down. It was the Dark Magician. I am Yugi in this moment, and so that kind of felt more special to me, I guess.
Yeah, you got to be that person. So you're unique to a degree in the fact that you like live both like the anime lifestyle where you're really into that stuff and the card games. Did you have any trouble when you were getting back into the game where you were like the only anime kid, or was everybody still kind of in that vibe around when the time you got back?
Oh, yeah. You know what? It's probably the first one. I think when I got back in, it was this, I wouldn't call it like a unpleasant experience, but definitely finding out that a lot of people just remembered it. Like I liked that when I was like a kid or whatever, but not as many people were, I think, watching it when I got back in like 7th, 8th grade. And there were a few people who were, and there were a few people who I think like maybe had secretly sort of always been there and just maybe felt like, oh, well, like I'm, it's puberty. It's not like cool anymore to maybe like those things. But yeah, so like it kind of took finding a crowd, so to speak. I had to like really spot the other people who were interested in this. And I did sort of catch up on some of the anime stuff like that I had missed in that period of time. I feel like I'm a bit of a stranger in that like I didn't really watch any GX, not because I didn't like it, but just because like I wasn't Yu-Gi-Oh-ing. That is kind of weird though,
because like you're a big GX stan now, and it's one of these fan favorite series because how funny it is. But I mean, like my face was just like, "Whoa, you didn't watch GX as it was on TV?"
Yeah, I didn't watch it. It feels strange. I mean, I really didn't even watch a whole bunch of 5Ds, but I think it was convenient because like it was happening as I was getting back in, so there was a little bit more incentive there.
Makes sense. So, based on when I went back, I went back to the TeamAPS channel and I sorted videos by oldest first. And from what you're talking about, it sounds like when you got back in the game, that's about the time that you picked the camera up too, because that looked like around the 5Ds era.
Just about.
So, some people don't know this. I knew what TeamAPS meant immediately, but can you let people know what the APS stands for?
Yeah. So, it's APS is Android Psycho Shocker, and if that sounds like a bit of a surprise for people, that's actually sort of the general like translation of what Jinzo's name or title is in like just the Japanese sort of Yu-Gi-Oh verse. So he's like an android with like psycho shocking powers. And obviously I don't know how they ended up translating that to Jinzo here, but I named it that because I liked right around the time that I was getting back in, there was a kind of obscure card shop that my mom would take me to. It was like 30 minutes out, and it didn't actually even have like tables for playing Yu-Gi-Oh, but it would sometimes have Yu-Gi-Oh products. And I remember getting one of those Shonen Jump packs that had like the Kazuki Takahashi arts of a few cards, like the Dark Magician, I think they had Jinzo, they had like a Summon Skull, Shiba Warrior Taro. And so those were, I remember like seeing those cards and they felt special and different. And I guess obviously they were special and different. And I loved the pose that they had Jinzo in. Like it was just, he seemed so like maniacal and like kind of just overflowing with power. much more dynamic posing than its regular card art. And so it just kind of made me think like, I'm going to name the channel after this. And it's kind of a fun acronym. It doesn't, I don't know if it like really rolls off the tongue all that well, but I thought that it was like a cool thing. And it's sort of like a code word too. So it's like, it can just sound like a YouTube channel, but it also like, if you know sort of thing. And so Android Psycho Shocker.
Android Psycho Shocker. So I noticed, a lot of people do go back and they watch that first video because I think with popular channels like yours, oh, what was the start like? But when I really started digging in, I saw that like the first vision of TeamAPS, it had a lot of local deck profiles and it had interviews from people like staff and stuff like that. So when you say you guys are like the first podcast, you kind of are the only podcast on the internet.
Yeah, you could say that. Early on, I had like two sort of things I liked about YuGiOh. And, well, actually, you know what? Better place to start. Where the camera came in, because that's probably more relevant here. I always liked cameras. Like, I remember getting into, I'd made like AMVs a little bit, like with just anime clips my sister happened to have on the computer.
Anime music
like,
videos for people not hardcoded like us.
Yeah, I'd make like AMVs, and I also, I always wanted to do something with a camera, and I just kind of, it happened that that interest was coming alive right around the time that my interest in YuGiOh was revitalizing. So while it almost sounds a bit anticlimactic, it just was like a marriage of convenience in a way, where it's just like, okay, well, I have a camera now, and I'm into YuGiOh now, so I will put a camera in front of the cards, and like, whatever happens, happens. And so early on, the YuGiOh content I would watch other people make was usually pack openings. Which is funny because I don't really do very much of that myself these days, like just opening packs and stuff on video. But I did, I just liked, like Light of Destruction, Phantom Darkness. I was always interested in seeing like, would someone pull a Dark Arm Dragon? These cards that I couldn't really like get my hands on at the time. And so like that's what I would watch. So when I actually made videos, I was obviously too young and underfunded to be able to buy a box of a set to crack open, or really even packs most of the time. But what I could do was record deck profiles. And, I built a couple of decks, so I'd record some myself. But then also, once you've recorded your deck like 2 or 3 times, there's not much more to show with that. So I was like, okay, well, I'll ask friends and have them talk about the decks that they're playing. And that was kind of the early funnel of content, was just me, a couple of people I knew. We'd play at like a library after school that we didn't even actually have a card shop. And we would record stuff like that. And then once I sort of found out about, the card shop that was a ways away, even just going to that card shop was an experience, because it was like 20, 25 minutes out, and I had to kind of beg my parents to take me. But when I got to go there, I met other players, and I found myself almost more interested in what people had to say about YuGiOh. So I would do these vids where I think I call them like player perspectives, is basically maybe the name for it. And it would just be like kind of these compilations of like, okay, I have a question and I want to ask all the Yu-Gi-Oh players willing to answer, what do you think about this? What do you think about this certain card? What do you think will be in the next like ban list update? What do you think is the best like side decking sort of philosophy to have? And I would take them and compile them. And so by doing that, it was like I could get a little bit of my Yu-Gi-Oh side and also a little bit of my video side and just like smush them together. It was fun to edit the videos. It was fun to like plan them out. Just the whole 9 yards.
So I remember the early YouTube around this era. It's not what it is now, where it's like, here's the algorithm and the clicks and so on and so forth. So what was your mindset as you kept doing it? Because there's so many videos at all these different events. Were you just kind of like, was it just art for the sake of art? Did you have a vision of what the channel could become?
So I would say that I did not have much of a vision, but I will, looking back, I think I knew that I wanted to be like an outlet for the broader Yu-Gi-Oh world. Like, for anybody who did watch those videos, I wanted them to come away from it with a slightly bigger perspective on Yu-Gi-Oh than they had before. So if that was like, okay, what do judges, like what's kind of the judging experience like with Yu-Gi-Oh? Like, I remember interviewing, people like Julia Hedberg. And
I saw,
it's crazy because like that was like a 2012 or something.
Yeah.
And just, it feels so long ago, but like that was like a big deal for me because I was just like, what is that experience like judging at an event like this, because that might have been like maybe my second YCS I ever went to, first or second one. And then also like trying to find, top players at the time and get a little bit of insight into the way that they approached events and the way that they viewed the game. And so I felt like, and then I remember making vids that were kind of more just how to prepare for a Yu-Gi-Oh event, or like what to expect at a Yu-Gi-Oh event. Like sort of, I guess you could almost call it like these edutainment would maybe be the word, where people can watch this and feel a little bit more motivated to further their own Yu-Gi-Oh experience and kind of like broaden their Yu-Gi-Oh perspective and not just sort of see it as like, well, Yu-Gi-Oh is simply the decks I have and like the locals I go to and that's it. It's like, well, no, there's like a broader Yu-Gi-Oh world out there. So I think that was what pushed me a good bit early on.
That makes perfect sense. It's funny, too, because early YouTube at the time didn't feel like it could be something where it's like a full-time job or you're a content creator. We didn't even have words for that. Was there a moment, though, as you're having like these early adventures where you're interviewing judges and stuff, where you're like, this is kind of getting momentum. Like now I feel like I'm not making it, but like this is something I should continue doing. This is a really big deal that this is happening.
I think it was kind of interesting because for me, it happened at a bit of a crossroads time. Like I had just gone to college. This is maybe, we'll say like 2013, 14, when some of the momentum began to build, where like I was in college. And so I'm just thinking, well, this is like kind of the stopgap between school and like the real world and a career and a bunch of other things. But that was also the time when I felt like I was able to hit a flow with like, I actually started thinking of my videos in terms of like a plan, like, this is what I'm going to release on Monday and this is what I want to have out on Wednesday. And like, I want people to kind of be able to have a repeatable expectation from me, like a schedule, or even if not a schedule, but just something they can expect. I would do like top 10 lists. And I remember like I started being more like bulk about them. Like I'm going to do this top 10, this top 10, and this top 10. So I'll think of them all, then find a good evening and record it. And so I guess I kind of turned it into more of a structure. And that was also around the time that I like met the people that, I'd go on to like make most of the videos I make with, people like Trell, Alex, Alec, like all my friends. And I think at that point, it's funny because it was called TeamAPS, but it really wasn't like in any way like a formal team. It was just, I made videos and I had friends who also kind of played Yu-Gi-Oh! And so they would just like pop up and stuff. But I think that was the point where there was a bit more of a like, the name matches what you're seeing sort of thing. And yeah, I think also, if I had to probably say one second thing, was around the time that I started being able to realistically get myself to events. Because I think early on, it was just, Yu-Gi-Oh! Was a locals experience. It was just a thing you could maybe do on the weekend. But once I started telling myself, hey, like maybe I should just go to the YCS that's like a state or two away and like plan to do so. I think that sort of got me, that also got me a lot of the way there. And probably the really big inciting incident almost was like getting recognized at YCS events. That's when I knew, I was like, oh, so there really are people who watch this. Like it isn't just the number on the screen. It's like there are Yu-Gi-Oh players like who I'm like a part of their Yu-Gi-Oh diet. Like it's not just that they're collecting cards. It's like they're also watching me and like they've watched this video and they've watched that video. They've even watched the one that was like a year or two ago. And it's like, it's very validating, I guess, for sure.
Is that ever like an out-of-body experience? Because I've been around you, at card shops before and in other places, and it's like no matter what you're doing or what you're wearing, they just know exactly who you are, like down to like the second. Like there he is.
Yeah, it is. Part of it, is like I've always had a bit of a complicated relationship with it. Not because I think like people maybe shouldn't recognize me or something, but just more like. Even from the early days, I was like a Yu-Gi-Oh player sharing a Yu-Gi-Oh experience. And so I'm always a little surprised when people view maybe my Yu-Gi-Oh know-how or expertise as more valuable than theirs necessarily. People are like, like you're like an authority figure on this. What do you think is going to happen on this ban list? Or like, how should this next product be? Or like, which deck is going to be the best now? And I'm kind of like, well, sort of whatever ends up being the best deck. Like, I've always had like a bit of a weird thing with that, but I do find it to be gratifying because it's like, I made a difference. Like I have helped somebody get back into Yu-Gi-Oh. Like nothing is better than hearing somebody say like, I got back into Yu-Gi-Oh because of you guys. Like I watched this stuff and like this made me want to do it. You guys looked like you were having so much fun, or just like the way you talked about it, like I didn't even know that this certain sort of card or deck like existed now. There are oftentimes people who don't even know that like Yu-Gi-Oh is still around, so to speak. Like some people are like, oh, like I thought that anime just ended, or like don't even call it anime, that TV show ended in like 2004 or something. And so when people tell me that like I was the reason for that, it's just something that like I made on my computer with like my, crappy little camera or whatever like, that I had at the time, like it's like, oh my gosh, I am an influencer, like I've influenced someone's decision to do something. So that's kind of where I think it started to like all click a little bit more. It's like, okay, this is maybe your calling, so stick with it.
Well, lately, I've noticed that you've been getting increasingly more competitive. That's not a bad thing by any means. But do you think that maybe the relationship that you have with some of the people who you influence, it kind of bounces back? Like they're doing more Yu-Gi-Oh, so you find yourself doing more Yu-Gi-Oh or getting better at it?
It's interesting. So part of I think at first when I got back in that like, 2008 time span, I was a big learner and reader. I remember I would frequent Pojo forums.
Pojo, wow.
Like there were Duelist Grounds, TCG Player, any place that was, like writing articles and publishing them, anywhere I could find a guide. I liked to read guides on decks I was planning on building. I liked to read guides on decks I had no interest in building, cards that I couldn't realistically like get my hands on at that age or time, but I just wanted to read everything. I wanted to read theory and like card advantage. What does that mean? Or how do you like read a game, say it's side decking, whatever. And I wanted to go to like regionals because I guess for me, it felt like something that was when I'd see people's binders and they would have like high rarity cards and like stuff from iconic past formats, something about that was so intoxicating. Like I want to be that one day. Like I want to like go to these events, make these trades, win these cards, and like build a binder that almost tells a story. And then for a while, and that happened for a few years. Like, I was effectively an Edison player. That was probably around the time when I like got into the most competitive parts of Yu-Gi-Oh. I took a break from it for a few years. And I think when I came back into competing, my motivation had changed somewhat from, I want to be the person winning the regional, winning the YCS, to now I kind of like want to improve for a reason perhaps closer to what you've said, which is like spite might not be the best word for it, but sometimes people sometimes assume like if you make Yu-Gi-Oh content that you don't know Yu-Gi-Oh, like that's maybe a more new like mentality people have towards it, where it's like, okay, these Yu-Gi tubers are just playing with random decks on eBay or like random old like retro stuff, so they don't really know like what's actually going on. They don't have any skills. And so
fans.
Yeah, exactly. And so I sort of nowadays, part of my Yu-Gi-Oh, competing is just to like prove to myself I'm not, that Yu-Gi tuber who just like, I'm just churning this stuff out and I have no clue what's going on. I love when people sort of underestimate me a little bit and like assume like, oh yeah, like he doesn't know. And then that way I can go and enter a local and like win the local or do pretty well at a regional, surprisingly. Like, are you playing at Nats? I bet you don't even have an invite. No, I have an invite to Nats. Like, this is something that I can, when I put my mind to it, do really well at. One of my favorite experiences with that was actually that Master Duel anniversary a couple years back, where
is the one that they put the video up this week?
Yeah, they put up a video for that recently, and I it was like the team duel, and I was gonna have to face Paulo, and the absolutely amazing player. I think I saw him on Twitter recently celebrating like his 50th premier top in Yu-Gi-Oh.
No,
like
today it's 51st. As of today, as of recording, he is on his 51st. Insane.
Just wild. Like generational talent, right? Like truly very good. And so I had to face him, and people like knew about this match going into it, and they're like, okay, this is, what is it? Hydrogen bomb versus coughing baby meme. Like that was like a whole. I saw that meme about myself. And I was like, wow, okay. And so that drove me. I was like, even if I might never accomplish anything close to what he has in the broader competitive Yu-Gi-Oh landscape, in this one isolated duel, I want to practice and like prove that I can, hang on for like one match, right? And I did. And like I remember really like prepping. I talked to Jesse Cotton. He helped me with my deck list and kind of some mentality stuff. And like I just played a lot of Master Duel. And then when the day came for that duel and I was able to like pull out that win and surprise everybody, like all these live chats and people like, what? Like there's no way this happened. And it's like, wow, he's actually really good. It just felt amazing.
We out here, if I remember right. We out here. That was the tag.
Yeah, it's so. I live for moments like that now. I almost feel like just moments to kind of prove that, I can still do well at Yu-Gi-Oh if I try, and I think anybody can. But it's sometimes good for me to remind myself that that's not just advice I'm telling people, but actually advice I'm taking myself. So.
Well, speaking of advice, one of the things, and I know you've heard this question before, but I'd be a terrible interviewer if I didn't ask it. What kind of advice do you have for content creators starting today? If they were like, man, I love Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm buying the camera, forget it, I'm just using my phone. How do they get started?
Oh, man, it's kind of a difficult one to answer because I do feel like there's an element of luck to it, like with all types of content creation. Sometimes it's just being in the right place at the right time. And so much has changed too, just from when I started, where like people know kind of that old school brand of YuGiTuber, the types of content that they made and the way that just the landscape looked at the time. I think today the biggest things are probably leading with a personality. You got to kind of have some sort of a personality, either a gimmick or otherwise, but you kind of got to have something like that. And I think not being afraid to dive into areas that Yu-Gi-Oh! That feel underserved. And if the moment that you find, let's say that somebody made 10 totally different types of Yu-Gi-Oh! Videos, and even if you have like 10 subscribers or something, and it just feels like this will never take off for you, of those 10 videos, one of them will do a little better than the other ones. It's just how the internet works. Something will stick with people. Whatever did the best, just make more of that until you kind of notice something else changing. I think that there is sometimes like a bit of wariness that people have about like kind of going into content creation without, like, people want a full perfect plan from the start, when in reality I think it's kind of more like try a lot and then see where the winds take you, and when the wind picks you up and starts to take you somewhere, kind of enjoy that ride. Like let that be the lesson. But maybe a more grounded thing, and I've told a lot of people this, and this applies not, I think, just to Yu-Gi-Oh!, but to anything that you're doing. Just make the next video a smidgen better than the last one. Think of the smallest thing that you can improve. When I was recording this deck profile, the ceiling fan was spinning, and you could see the reflection in the card. So, okay, for next deck profile, I will stop the ceiling fan, and now that's not a problem. Or the audio was like a little bit bad because the refrigerator was on and it was like really loud. Okay. There was a period of time where I would turn off the refrigerator when recording. And
I'm pulling it from the wall.
Well, I just like turn whatever it was. But I did do a thing. I'd put like my computer mouse in the refrigerator, so that way when I finished recording, I'd get a forced reminder that, okay, you need to turn the fridge back on because like where's your mouse? And so it was like a whole. But yeah, like just even if you can just find like small tiny things, re-listen back. Did you explain the card well, or like were the cards centered on the mat? Small stuff. If you improve any little thing with each video, you will be so surprised how like in a few months or like a year down the line, your vids look better, sound better, flow better. Like just they're a little bit more pleasant to watch for people, because that's a big part of it. And I think that's pretty timeless advice too. Like that worked for me back when I started, and that still works for people today.
Little bits of incremental change. Well, speaking of change, we've got just a crazy year ahead of us, but we don't know all the details, right? Besides the World Championship and a couple of new sets, there's just kind of a blank space for Yu-Gi-Oh! Announcements in the future. Is there anything you're hoping gets announced? Like, this is the dream. Oh my God, we're back.
So the number one thing I've been following, or well, as much as I can follow it, is that Yu-Gi-Oh! VR demo. The one that they showed it at the Tokyo Dome. They've shown it in a couple of the World Championship qualifiers. I genuinely hope that Konami does something with that. I know that the work has been done at least to make a playable demo. So even if they were to just put that demo out on like the Meta Quest store, right? It just is something you could download and play, but hopefully to turn that into even more would be huge. I think that there are so many people who, even if they don't necessarily have a lot of interest in picking up a card again, or necessarily like, watching an anime or something, if they just see like, you put on this headset and these cards kind of come to life, and like Dark Magician Girl's talking to you, and like you're facing blue eyes and the screen is shaking as it gets summoned, and like, just, I think that would be really, really big. Just for Yu-Gi-Oh fans and for just regular folks who maybe were former Yu-Gi-Oh fans or whatever. I think I would love, love, love to see an announcement about that. Maybe that could come at like a Jump Festa or something else, but I really, really want to see more of that, because the Yu-Gi-Oh games right now are like popping. I like where Master Duel is. I like Duel Links, like even early days collection. Like it's a nice look into the past, but I think that the Yu-Gi-Oh VR game would be a perfect like future, hey, this is kind of the big, bold new thing. So that's probably my number one.
I am containing my inner joy. I did get a chance to try it myself. I told them immediately how cool it is, because it really is. And I am hoping that we do get to see it one day, because I do think that that's something that we've been hearing. I can't believe how many comments I've seen. Like, I'll get a dual disc when it projects holograms, etc. VR is pretty close to that, it feels like.
Yeah, it feels like that's kind of by today's tech and like kind of all that's where it is. I mean, and there's so many variations on that you could do, but I don't even care what they do. I just want it. Whatever it is, I'm okay with that.
No, I definitely feel you on that. Well, typically we save the end of an episode for things like shout-outs, although you don't need your voice amplified in any way, shape, or form. But is there anybody that you want to say thanks to or supporting, etc.?
Honestly, I mean, outside of, just my friends and just anybody who's helped me, video editors, any of that, like shout out to all of those people. But I actually think like shout out to some of the people who took a chance on like my videos years ago. People like Julia Hedberg, who agreed to do an interview with me. People like, some of the, should I mention TCG Player in this?
You can't?
Okay. So early on, I remember like getting my first major, we'll call it major, channel sponsorship from like TCG Player back in like 2014, 15. And it wasn't like a major sponsorship. It was just, they would like send a box of the new set and we would do like an opening. But people like that taking a chance on me is like a big part of the reason why I'm here. So anybody just that just ever agreed to allow me to place a camera in front of them and ask them a question or like duel them, I think deserves a medal for that, because I mean that got me here. So yeah.
Sort of takes a village to raise a YouTube channel.
You could say so. You really could.
Well, Paul, this has been great, and thank you as always. I'm sure everybody knows where to find you, but if not, we'll go ahead and put all of your social links down in below. I'll go ahead and give you the last word, because again, it's not me and Yu-Gi-Oh, it's you and Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yeah, well, honestly, thanks for having me. Seriously, it's always fun to just talk Yu-Gi-Oh, talk the things that got us here, because I do think everybody who is watching this has probably had a slightly different Yu-Gi-Oh journey. So whatever your journey kind of ends up being, like, it could lead you to a spot on a video like this, right? Where you're being like interviewed. How'd you get into it? What's your thing? Like, what kind of makes you unique as a player? So yeah, thanks for having me.
Anytime. Well, I guess in the words of the great Paul of Team APS, pass turn.
Pass turn.